Hello everyone. In this video class, we are going to see the operating system subject, module 5 concepts. We are going to start module 5 today. In the module 5 we have mainly three things. One is secondary storage structures, protection, and a case study of Linux. Linux is the operating system that uh, case study we are going to do in this part, and we have protection, then secondary storage structures. Let us first go for secondary storage structures. Before that, if you want any more information related to these topics, you can refer this operating system principle 7th edition textbooks. Let us go for first topic, secondary storage structures. You all the data or instructions we are going to store in secondary device. That is we can call it as a disk also, that is a hard disk. So what is the shape of the hard disk? So here they given one diagram. So that is a internal diagram of the disk or secondary storage structures, and this is a magnetic disk. This diagram is called magnetic disk structure. In the magnetic disk structures, we have here many CD like structure. That is called platters, and both side and bottom side and upper side we can write and read anything. Here also we have platter. Many platters are there in one disk. This one disk contain lot of sectors. Sector means first we can go for track. One disk here, this is a platter. One platter contain lot of tracks. Track means this is you can see here, this is one track. Like this we have lot of a round shaped track in this platters. So you can see in the CD and DVD also, that is visible in CD and DVD. Lot of tracks are there in the CD and DVD, and each track is divided into small area that is called sectors, and we are going to write our data in that sector, and we can read the data only from that sector. So all tracks are divided into sectors. So here in this platter we have, this is the one track. In that same place we have, in the another platter in that same place we have another track. Another platter in that same place we have another track. So all the tracks are combined together form one cylinder. So just this is a virtual part, we are assuming this like this. So here anyway in platter we have lot of tracks. Like that, if you are going to combine that tracks of the all platters, so let us check, lot of cylinders are there. Here we have only one cylinder, just assumption one cylinder is there, because cylinder means just here one track is there. So same position here also we have track, same position here also we have track. That tracks are combined together, that means they form one shape or form one line of that particular track. So here both side, so that shape is called cylinder shape. Like that we have lot of tracks in each cylinder, each platter, so we can combine that form a cylinders. So here in this sector we are going to write and read anything. So sector means that is a small data storage area. So here that reading and writing everything is possible by this arm. So this you can see here diagram. So this one and this one, upper side and both bottom side, we can write and read both side. So that is happened by using arm. So arm is controlled by arm assembly. And how to write that? So this is just movement, but from this is the head of your arm. So from that head we can write and read. So that's why here read and write head. So here we have that head. By using that head we can read and write, and we can move that. That's why here we have arm, we can move that. Now we will go for some of the important points related to this secondary storage structures. And this structure is a magnetic disk which provides a bulk of secondary storage. You can store many things in this. That is why here bulk of secondary storage. A disk come in various size and speed. Here the information is stored magnetically. You know this every information stored in the here is magnetically we can store. That's why this is called magnetic disk. Each disk platter has a flat circular shape like a CD. So this is called platter. Like this we have lot of platter in one disk. So that is here they given like that. That is the information is stored magnetically. And another one, each disk platter has a flat circular shape like CD. This is a circular shape, that is called platter. The two surface of the platter are covered with a magnetic material, both side, both bottom side and upper side we have magnetic material in order to write or read anything. The surface of the platter is logically divided into circular tracks. In the platter we have this surface, this is upper surface, bottom side also we have same thing. So we can divide that, we can form many tracks here. So which is subdivided into sector. Each track is subdivided into sector, small area. Sector is a basic unit of storage. The set of tracks that are at one arm position make up a cylinder. So we have track is divided into sectors. Each sector we can read and write, and same position, that means here we have one track like that, in that same position. In this platter also we have track, so that two tracks are combined together form one cylinder. So how many platters are there? All platters same position track is combined together, then there is a formation of cylinder. The number of cylinder in the disk drive equal the number of track in each platter. Number of cylinders in the disk drive. So how many cylinders are there? Cylinder means that this is the shape of cylinder. That is a same tracks are combined together from the different platters. And number of cylinders in the disk drive equal to number of tracks in the each platter. So how many tracks are there in this one platter? That many cylinders we have in the entire disk. There may be 1,000 of concentric cylinder in a disk drive, and each track may contain 100 of sectors. Each track may contain lot of sectors also, lot of tracks also there in one platter. The storage capacity of the disk drive is measured in gigabytes, GB. So each storage capacity of the disk drive, entire disk, is in GB. To read or write, the head must be, that means this one, read and write head, must be positioned at the desired track and at the beginning of the desired sector on that track. That means that head should be on that particular sector. Because we are going to concentrate on that sector, we can write or we can read that sector. So that head of that arm should be properly positioned to that sector. As the disk head files on an extremely thin cushion of air, the head will make contact with the disk surface. Although disk platter are coated with a thin protective layer, sometimes the head will damage the magnetic surface. This accident is called head crash. Here we have platter, and platter we have lot of tracks. Tracks are subdivided into sectors. We can read or write that particular sector, and entire disk is size is in GB, and the reading and writing is possible by using a read and write head. So if there is any problem in this head, or if there is any problem happens by using this arm or movement of this arm, at that time there may be a chance of damage of this surface, platter surface. That is called accident, or it is called head crash. So there may be a chance of damage because of this head. Protecting layer is there in the platter, both upper side and lower side we have protecting layer, but then also sometimes there may be a chance of damage because of this head. That damage is called head crash. We have some of the very important terms while coming to these topics. One is a seek time, then the rotational latency, then positioning time, disk bandwidth, transfer rate. So first we will go for what is the meaning of seek time. The time required to move the disk arm to the required track. Track means we have here, and sector means there is a subdivided part of the track. Time required to move the disk arm to the required track. Disk arm means this one. So arm, how much time is required to move? The movement of this arm is possible. So how much time that arm will take to move from one point to required point. Required means required point means required sector. So how much time is required? So that is called your seek time. Rotational latency, another name is rotational delay. The time taken for the disk, that means here for the disk or platter to rotate so that required sector comes under the read and write head. So here in the seek time, this arm assembly will move. In the rotational latency, disk itself moves. Arm assembly, keep it as it is. A disk will move in the rotational latency, but in the seek time, disk is as it is without moving, but arm assembly will move. In the rotational latency or rotational delay, your platter or entire disk will rotate, because we need that particular sector. If that sector is this one, it should rotate and it should come under this head. That is the how much time is required to move this sector under this, that is called rotational latency. Positioning time means you can add this rotational latency and seek time, then we are getting positional time or random access time is the summation of seek time and rotational delay. Disk bandwidth. Disk bandwidth is the total number of bytes. There we have we can going for one numerator divided by denominator. That is the formula to find out the disk bandwidth. In the numerator, what we have is total number of bytes transferred is there in numerator, and denominator we have time taken between, or total time between first request for the service and completion of the last transfer. The time, how much time is required between first response or first request to last transfer. First request to last transfer, how much time is there in between? That is in denominator, and numerator total number of bytes transferred. So that divided by this you will get disk bandwidth. And transfer rate, so we have one side disk, we have one side computer. How much data is transferred to disk at a time, that is called transfer rate. Rate at which data flow between drive and the computer. How much data is flowed from your computer to drive. Drive means this entire thing, so it contains a lot of platters, so that is called drive. So how much data transferred, that is rate, that is how much percentage, or that we can call it as transfer rate. While coming to next topic, that is a magnetic tape. In the previous slide we seen magnetic disk and here we are seeing magnetic tape. Magnetic disc is magnetic tape, both are different. So magnetic disc, we have some of the disadvantage, and magnetic tape also we have some of the disadvantage. So first we will see what is the thing of magnetic tapes. Magnetic tape is a secondary storage medium. It is same as that previous magnetic disk. It is a permanent memory and can hold large quantity of data. It is a permanent memory. The time taken to access the data is large compared with the magnetic disk. Previous one we seen magnetic disk, this one is a magnetic tape. So here time taken to access the data is large in the magnetic tape compared to magnetic disk, because reason is everything data access in sequential manner. That is the disadvantage here. Sequentially that is accessed. What do I mean by sequential? When the nth data has to be read, nth data, the tape start moving from first and reaches the nth position, and then data is read from the nth position. Sequential means first to nth, every data are checked, or every data are you read. Then when once it reaches nth data, then we can find that whatever required data is reached. So like that there is a sequentially one by one checking is required. It is not possible to directly move to the nth position. It is very difficult. In this sequentially means one by one. We can't directly go to nth. So the tape are used mainly for backup, for storage of infrequently used information. We are using this as a backup. We are not using this as a main memory. Reason is given. We are not using this as a main memory. Reason is we are going in sequential manner. So we are taking this for a backup purpose. Backup means it is only used to store infrequently used information. Frequently used information we can keep that in magnetic disk. Now we moving to another concept called disk structure. In the disk structure, disk means we already seen it is a storage device, secondary storage device. What is the structure of the disk? We seen some of the things about your sectors, track, platters, everything. Depend on that itself, we are dividing this into two parts, or two architecture, or two structures. One is CLV, another one is CAV. CLV means constant linear voltage, CAV means constant angular velocity. Sorry, not voltage, velocity. Constant linear velocity, constant angular velocity. Now we will concentrate first upon constant linear velocity. Before going to that, just concentrate on this diagram. By using this I will explain these lines. So first we will see first one. The density of the bits per track is uniform. The capacity of the number of bits, every information or every data stored in your secondary device is in bit format, zeros and ones. So density, capacity of your storage capacity of bits per track is uniform. Same number of bits we can store in your track. The further a track is from a center of the disk, the greater the length, so the more sector it can hold. As we move from outer zone to inner zone, that is, this is the outer zone and this is your inner zone, the number of sectors per track decreases. Number of sectors, anyway, your how sectors decreases. Sector means it is a part of the track. We are dividing track into small area, that is called sector. So as your here track is large, as you coming to middle point, track becomes small. Track becomes small means sector becomes small. As we move outer zone to inner zone, number of sector per track decreases. This architecture is used in CD and DVD. CD and DVD we are using this type of architecture, CLV. But what do you mean by CAV? In the CLV we seen here outer track we have large track, and while coming to inner side it is a small track. Again track is divided into sectors, so here we have, because of larger track we have many sectors. Here small track is so small sectors, that is a small number of sectors. And density of that sector, the density of bit stored in the track also small. Here density of bit storing capacity also large. Constant angular velocity means, that is the second diagram, there is the same number of sector in each track. Here we have track, we can save same number of sectors are there. Here we have different number of sector. In the outer region we have many number of sector, in the inner region we have small number of sector. Here not like that. Here entire your disk we have same number of sectors in the each track. The sector are densely packed in the inner track. The density of bits decreases from inner track to outer track to keep the data rate constant. Density of bit decreases from inner track to outer track. So here actually density is small. You can see we have same number of sectors in each track. You can see outer track. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 number of tracks are there in last. Here inner 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So totally 8 again tracks are there in the inner side also. So we have outer edge and inner track same number of sectors are there. That is the comparison of CLV and CAV. Disk attachment. Computer can access the data in two ways. How your computer will access the data? We have two methods. One is host attached storage, another one is a network attached storage. Now we will go for host attached storage. Host attached storage is another name is via input output, and network attached storage is via remote control. Now we will go for first one, host attached storage. Host attached storage is storage accessed through local input output. Example, typical desktop PC uses a input output bus architecture. This architecture supports a maximum of 2 drive per input output bus. I can tell one general example for this host attached. You have desktop system and you have one box there, that is you are calling it as a CPU. Inside that we are going to connect one hard disk in that, so that is called host attached. You have that hard disk and you are going to save everything in that hard disk. You are going to read anything, you are going to write anything inside that. That is host attached. So we have our disk with ourselves. Host attached storage access through local input output ports. Input output means we have some of the main thing, some bus architecture or some of the buses. That buses will communicate with hard disk. Your computer will communicate with hard disk by using some of the buses, input output bus, and we can access or we can read or we can write any data from that disk. That is called your host attached. But network attached is not like that. Here network attached, everything is stored in server. In the previous we have disk, it is visible, disk is visible to us, so we can store there. and we can read and we can write anything. So, but here we have server. Is that server is visible? No, server is not visible to us. So here through internet, everything is communicated through internet. Here we have a lot of clients. All clients data are there in your server. So you can store anything in server through internet. You can read anything from the server through internet. You can write anything to server from internet by using internet. So this is the network attached storage. Normally nowadays, in order to store a lot of data, so many people concentrating on network attached storage. Network attached storage device is a special purpose storage system that is accessed remotely over a network. Remotely means through internet. Clients access network attached storage via a remote procedure called interface. Then you can ask, what do you mean by remote procedure call? So that is carried out by using actually TCP and UDP. You know about TCP and UDP in the previous semesters. And transmission control protocol, user datagram protocol. So these are the two protocol, and through internet we are how data are moved from server to client, client to server. That concept we already seen in the TCP and UDP concept. So mainly that is here thing is server and client concept through internet. So here network attached means server is there, client is there, everything is stored and everything read, write, everything is possible through internet to server. Another one special case is there, special case, that is a storage area network, that is a SAN. Short form is SAN. Storage area network is a private network connecting server and storage unit. So you can see in this diagram, here many clients are there and here servers are there. Here in this SAN, that is a storage area network, it is a special purpose or special usage thing. So many storage units are connected to storage area network, and many servers are connected to storage area network, and many data processing centers are also connected to this storage area network, and all the clients can communicate with the storage area network. For that we need internet, but mainly here completely prohibited. That means the provision is there. So password and user ID, many things are there, because storage area network means it is a large concept, very big concept, and lot of servers and data, some of the data processing storage area storage units are connected to SAN, and directly client can't access everything with the SAN. There is a lot of provisions, or there is a lot of passwords and everything. So in order to store anything here, in order to access anything here, so we need a lot of provisions. So after authority, you can take anything from SAN. Then we are coming to very important topic in this fifth module, that is a disk scheduling. Disk scheduling, we have how your scheduling concept, how your we seen some of the process scheduling concept in the previous modules, like that how your data or how you anyway you are going to use the disk to store the data. If user asks for the data, that means for read time, user asks that data. So how that data is supplied from the disk concept, that is a disk, to user. So disk, we have data that is asked by user, so we have to supply that disk data to user. So how it is stored? So actually we are dividing into sectors, small blocks. So there we have data. So that data is supplied to your user through block wise. One block we have one data. That block wise we are going to supply the data to the user. So that concept, some of the scheduling, how that data is given to user or allocated to user, how it is scheduled to user. So for that we have one particular algorithm that is called disk scheduling algorithms. So we have some of the algorithms are listed here, that is a FCFS, SSTF, SSCAN, sorry, scan, CSCAN, look, CLOOK. These are the different types of disk scheduling algorithms. And now we will go for one by one of out of this disk scheduling algorithm. First one is a FCFS. So what do you mean by FCFS? That is a first come first serve scheduling algorithm. This service they request in the order they are received. This is the definition of FCFS, first come first serve. The algorithm is a fair but not provide fastest service. That is a disadvantage here, not fast. Example, consider a disk queue with the request for input output to block on cylinders. Block means it is a storage area. We are going a small storage area. We are going to save the data in that. So these are the different types of blocks, or we can call it as tracks, or we can call it as sectors. Here in this, actually user wants some data, right? The data are stored here in this sector blocks. In these blocks we have user required data. So how these blocks are supplied to user, how that is supplied to, that block is given to user, in which order that block is given to user. So that we can see by using some of the algorithms. Now first is FCFS. What is the concept? Which is the first come? Here this is first come first serve. Whatever data present in 98, serve that. 98 to 183 are the numbers, the block numbers. Okay, so that is not data, that is just data inside that block. So just block number is given here. So 98 block is first served, then 183 block, then 37, 122, like that. Which one came first, that is served first. So that method we are going to use in FCFS. Here one example is given. This is the example, they given some block numbers. If the disk head is initially at the 53, now consider when you are starting, your position is in 53 block, you are there, okay, not in 0. You are in 53, so you have to start in 53. It will first move it to 53. That means 53 we have from first move it to 53 to 98, because which is the first task 98. So 53 to 98 you have to move like this, and whatever service is required by the user from the 98 block, serve that. Then which is the next block asked, 183, go to 183 here, this line 183. Then what is the next, 37, come to 37, here we have 37. Then 122, again go to 122. Then we have 14, same order, whatever they asked, same order, 14. Then 124, then 65, after 65, 67, stop there. Now which is the destination, you are in 67th position. So this is called FCFS. You started in 53, you are in now 67. As per order, whatever first come first serve order, we are going to serve that block to user. Now we will go for second algorithm, that is SSTF, shortest seek time. We already seen definition of seek time, so we will see the concept related to that. This select the request with the minimum seek time from the current head position. SSTF chooses the pending request closest to the current head position. Closest request to the current head position. Okay, where are you now? You are in 53. You have started in 53. So which is closest block out of this? Out of we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 blocks are there. So whatever user data that is saved in 8 blocks. So how that 8 block is supplied to user? So that procedure we are going to see. You are in 53, which is nearest to 53, that is served. Which is nearest to that is served. Like that nearest thing we are going to serve. So that method we are going to use here. If the disk head is initially at the 53, the closest is cylinder is at cylinder 65. Now 65th block is closest to 53. Now 65 is, yeah, it is closest, that's why it jumps to 65 and serve that block. After 65, which is nearest out of this 8, that is 67, so go to 67, serve that. Then after 67, which is closest, one is 37, one is 98, two numbers are there, one is 37, 98. So out of that, which is closest, actually after 67, 37 is closer than 98. Just you can calculate numbers, how much distance is there. So 37 is closer than 98. So 67 to 37, it moves to 37. So you can see it moves to 37, serve that. So it serves 37. Continuing, we are serving, which is nearer to 37, 14, right? So we are jumping to 14, serve that. After 14, no option, because out of remaining thing, 98 is the closest. So we have to jump it to 98, serve that. Which is nearest to 98, 122. Go to 122, serve that. Then 124. Then 183. We are seeing only these things, blocks. Once you served that 183 block, then you are the last position, that is a dead end. So you are in 183 position, your service is completed. So this is another one, SSTF, but this is also not optimal, good position. So here that is the disadvantage. Improvement is there, but it is not optimal. So we are going to another one. So scan algorithm. In this, disk arm start moving towards one end, serving the request as it reaches each cylinder until it gets to the other end of the disk. So it start from one end of the disk and it moves to other end. In that, whatever movement is there from one end to another end, at that time what are the services requested are there, just we are going to serve that. At the other end, the direction of the head movement is reversed and servicing continues. The initial direction is chosen depending upon the direction of the head. So once you are starting from one end, go to dead end, then at that point again reverse your phase, come to first end. Whatever services asked while coming to beginning end, that you have to serve again. Then again reverse your phase, go to dead end. What are the requests asked in between, what are the requests are there, just service and go to dead end. That is the thing. So we can call it as elevator. So elevator, you know, just it moving to last. Again another side we are coming to up side, another elevator that goes to down, another elevator that goes to up. So that method, elevator method. So in between whatever thing is there, just we have to serve that. Just we will go for one example. Consider a disk queue with the request for input output block on the cylinder 98. These are the requests by the user. Now how to allocate that request? If the disk head is initially at the 53, now you are in 53, and if the head is moving towards the outer track, so just my suggestion is don't refer this diagram, because this diagram is given in your textbook, but some wrong method they used in this diagram. So here just see this theory part. So I will explain related to theory how we have to perform this scan. So initially you are in 53, and if the head is moving towards the outer track means this side, that is a increasing order, 53, then outer track, it services 65. So which is the next one after 53, that is a 65. Here 65, it goes to 65, serve that. Then again you are moving, while moving next, what is the next block asked? 67, just go to 67, serve that. Then again you are moving to dead end. At that time, which is the next block is came there, 98, go to 98, serve that. Which after 98 another block came there, 122, go to 122, serve that. Again you are moving to dead end. At that time another block came there, 124, go to 124, serve that. Then again you are moving, but another block came there, 183, go to 183, serve that to user, and again move your path, that is to dead end. So at the cylinder 199 is the dead end, right? So last number is 199. 199, the arm will reverse. Once you reached 199, just reverse your face and again move towards 0. Okay, just you are moving, you are coming to 0 now. While coming, moving towards the other end on the disk, while coming to beginning end, you already allotted these things, which is 98, 183, these are the allotted, already allocated to user, but remaining is only two things, one is 37, one is 14. So you have to allocate that to user while coming to beginning end. So you are moving this remaining all things are allocated. So from 199 you are just moving to beginning end, and when it reaches 37, just stop there, go to 37 and allocate to user, and again move it to 0. Now again one thing is request is came there 14. So go to 14, stop there and allocate that to user, and again move it to next, that is a 0. Once you reach a 0, reverse your face and move it to again 199. In between any request came, then you have to supply that, and again you have to move it to your path. Your path is fixed. Go to dead end, go to beginning end. That is a fixed path. Yeah, C-scan. That is a full form is a circular scan. C-scan is a variant of S-scan. Some changes is there in S-scan. Only that whatever changes is there we have to apply here. Designed to provide more uniform weight, like S-scan, C-scan. C-scan moves the head from end of the disk to other service and request along the way. When the head reaches the other end, it immediately returns the beginning of the disk. So this is the algorithm used in C-scan. That is, when it reaches to other end, when you reaches to 199, suddenly you are reversing and you have to directly come to 0. In between, no need to serve anything. But in the S-scan we are serving, right, in 37, while coming also we are serving 37 and 14, but in the C-scan no need to serve while coming, just empty bus we have to come here, again you have to start servicing. Okay, so while returning no need to serve anything, and again we have to start serving from 0. That is the method we are using in C-scan. So we will see that example. Consider a disk queue request. So these are the request blocks by the user. Now if the disk head is initially 53, you are in 53 block, and if the head is moving towards the outer track means the increasing order, if the service, what is the first thing nearest to 53, you are moving to dead end, whatever there in your path you are going to serve that, that's it. So just move from 53. While moving, what is the next one? 65. So you have to move it to 65, serve that, and go to next 67, serve 98, serve that, 122, serve 124, serve 183. Just you have to see this. Okay, this is given in randomly, but we have to arrange in order. So 122, 124, 183, we are serving that. Once it reaches 183, actually that is a last service, but we can't stop there. So what is our job? We have to move till dead end. What is the dead end? 199. So we have to stop in the dead end. Once it reaches dead end, then we have to reverse our phase. Then directly come to 0. There is no servicing required in between. So after reaches dead end, directly you have to come to 0. Again start any service. If there is any service, you have to start that. So yeah, service is there in the 14. 14 is required, 37 is required. That means that two blocks are remaining, other blocks are serviced. So go to 14, stop there, service it. Go to 37, stop that and service that to user. Again directly goes to dead end, there is no service, other service. Again come to 0. Go to 199 and 0, 199 and 0. That is the method we are using in C-scan. That is called circular scan. Then we have look scheduling algorithm. So look and clook scheduling are different version of the scan and cscan. So look and clook, that is the next slide we are going to see clook algorithm. This slide we are going to see look algorithm. These are the same, almost same method like scan and cscan respectively. Here the arm goes only as far as the final request in each direction. So I will come to direct point, that is you are moving from one end to another end. You are moving to dead end. You are not stopping in between. Directly your path is to go there to dead end. That is the last point. That is a 199. So here we are not doing that. Here what is the last request came? 183. We are going to stop there itself, and we are facing reverse side in that on that 183 point itself. We are not moving to dead end. So only that is a change here and the previous algorithms. Previous algorithm look and scan is same, clook and cscan is same, but changes is in the scan we are moving till last point, that is a 199, but in the look algorithm we are stopping in the last request block. Last request block is 183. We are stopping there. I will go show that. See, in the previous case we are moving till 199, but actually request came 183, came from 183. Then also we are moving to 199 because we need to go to that end. But here in this look algorithm we are stopping in this position, reversing our phase, and come to your beginning end, that is a 0. While coming, which are the services are there, you have to, that means which are the requests are there, you have to service that. Here you can see that, right? Scan algorithm we see in that method. So same thing we have in this look scheduling algorithms. Let us see that. Consider the disk queue, they given some request. If the disk head is initially 53, we will start with 53, and if the head moving towards the outer track, it service the 65, because after 53 we have 65, then which is there out of this 67, then 98, then 122, then 124, then 183. But in the previous algorithm again we are moving to 199, but here no. In the 183 itself you have to stop. The final request is 183, stop there, and then reverse your phase. That is the arm will reverse, then and will move towards the request 37. So while returning also, while returning to beginning end, so there also you have to service whichever requests are there, that you have to service. So 37 serve that, 14 also serve that, and come to 0. No, don't come to 0, because 14 is the last thing. So stop in 14, reverse your phase, again start there. So you no need to go to dead end, you no need to go to beginning end. So what is the last request? 183, which is the first request 14, there you can stop, and 183 also you can stop, and you can reverse your phase in that last request itself. No need to again move it to dead end. So we can reduce our time. clook algorithms also same, but clook and cscan difference is here we are just moving to 183, we are stopping in 183, but in cscan we are going till 199. Then you are reversing your phase directly, that coming to beginning end 0. Again we are starting our service, but in this case we are starting with the 53, moving to 183. Last point is 183, stop there, reverse your arm, directly come to first one, which is the first one 14, and then go to 37. Okay, but in the previous cscan algorithm we are going to 199, then again come to 0, then 14, then 37. Here we have to stop where is the last request, and which is the first request, there itself we have to stop. But again difference between clook and look algorithm is, here we are moving to 183 we have to stop, reverse your phase, while coming directly you have to come to 14 in this clook. But in the look algorithm while coming itself, which is the required thing 37, supply that, and then which is thing 14, supply that. That is the difference. Only here this is the difference. We are coming to beginning end in this case, but there we are coming to beginning end, but while coming itself we have to serve. So that is the method we are using, a look, and this is the C look. So these are the different scheduling algorithms we have in the disk method. So we will compare that, which is good, which is somewhat bad. So that is called the selection methods. So different selection methods are there. SSTF is commonly used and it increases the performance over FCFS. SSTF is good compared to FCFS. SCAN and CSCAN, sorry, not SCAN, SCAN. SCAN and CSCAN, that is a circular scan, algorithms better for heavy load on disk. This is a better if there is any heavy load. SCAN and CSCAN have less starvation problem, that is a less blocking problem. SSTF, shortest time. So or look is a reasonable choice for the default algorithm. SSTF is commonly used algorithm, has it as a less seek time. So SSTF having less seek time. SCAN and CSCAN performs better for system with a heavy load on the disk. It is a better for heavy load. Selection of these algorithms itself difficult, right? Because one algorithm having one problem and one algorithm having one advantage. So how to select that particular algorithms? So that for that itself we have to study disk scheduling algorithm. That's why here they give on. Because of this complexity, disk scheduling algorithms is very important and is written as a separate module of the operating system. Because the disk scheduling algorithms, how to select your algorithm, that itself a complex thing. Now we are moving to another one, disk formatting. The process of dividing the disk into sectors and filling the disk with a special data structure is called low level formatting. Here mainly disk formatting means we are going to concentrate on sectors. So you know one platter contain many tracks and each track we are going to divide into sectors. So sector wise we are going to store the data, but one sector contains three parts. One is a data storage area, another one is a header, another one is a trailer. So what are the thing we have in header and trailer, we will see that. And here one thing is maximum part in the sector is dedicated to data storage itself. So that part we are going to see here. Sector is the smallest unit of area that is read write by the disk controller. The data structure for the sector typically consists of header. One is header, one is a data area, another one is a trailer. Three things we have in one sector. The header and trailer contain information used by the disk controller such as sector number and error checking code. Here error checking code short form is ECC, and another one sector number, that is there in your header and trailer. That is a small part, remaining everything is dedicated to data area. There we can save any datas. When a controller, and we are seeing what you mean by ECC here, when a controller writes a sector on the data, of data during normal input output, the ECC is updated with a value calculated from all the bytes in the data area. While writing any data inside your sector, we are going to give one code there. We are going to give some bits, that is the ECC. When a sector is read, when that particular sector is read, ECC is calculated, that is a recalculated, and is compared with the stored value. So ECC is is checked. So whatever data is corrupted or not, that means initially we are going to write some data inside your sector. So is that data is proper data or corrupted data? For that checking purpose, we are using one method called error correcting code. That is one code we have in header or trailer. So that code will judge that data is corrupted or not. If that any ECC code is mismatched, so here you have ECC code is mismatched, that means your data is corrupted. Disk sector may be bad. Okay, if that data, or that means ECC code in the written part and read part both are same, then we can call it as the data is not corrupted. So data is original data. Fewer header and trailer are written on each track and more space available for the user data. Okay, more space is given to user data, small space is given to header and trailer. Partition means we are dividing entire disk, okay, in small parts. So why we are dividing into parts? There are some reasons. One is, see, partition the disk into one or more groups of cylinders. The operating system can treat each partition as though it were separate disk. We are treating as separate disk, but it is not separate. We are just partitioning that entire disk into separate thing. For instance, why we are dividing? One part you can give it to operating system executable code. Another part you can give it to files, hold user files. So for user purpose we can give one partition, and operating system purpose we can give another partition. So by that you can divide one for OS, one for user, like that. But this is a common one disk, we are just dividing into partitions. And logical formatting means that is coming under your file system, while we that seen in the previous module. So while coming to file system, how many blocks are allocated, how many blocks are free, that concept we need, right? So for that purpose we are going to study logical formatting. So data structure may include map for free blocks, allocated block, and about some directories. For that purpose we are going to see some logical formatting. And increase the efficiency, most file system group block together into larger chunks, frequently called clusters. So we are dividing, we are not partitioning, we are going to group some of the blocks and that form a cluster. Why we are grouping blocks? In order to increase the efficiency. We have another concept, that is a boot block. So you know a ROM concept, a read-only memory concept. So why we are using a ROM there? So in order to store your data or code permanently. So mainly that ROM, once you written anything inside the ROM, that is a permanent. We can't write, that means edit that. So a lot of codes we are going to place in ROM because of that purpose. Once you read, that means you can read only, you can't edit that, you can write. Here what do you mean by booting? So while restart your computer or restart your devices, we need some of the code related to your input output, that is called a booting code. So the booting code we are going to store in a ROM. Why? That boot code is very important code, and that is executed when your system is switch on. So where we are going to store that code in ROM? For that we have one concept called BIOS, right? So BIOS, there we have going to store that code. So we are going to see related to that boot code here in this slide. When a computer is switched on or rebooted, it must have an initial program to run. This is called bootstrap program, booting program. The bootstrap is stored in a read-only memory. Since ROM is read-only, it cannot be infected by the computer virus. The problem is that changing the bootstrap code require changing the ROM hardware chip. You know, once it is stored, you can read only. So if you want to change any program present in ROM, you have to change your ROM itself. Instead of changing ROM, we have another method that is called tiny bootstrap loader. So if you are going to install that tiny bootstrap loader program inside a ROM, then we have one advantage that we can change your program or code, boot code easily. How? See here. Only job is to bring the full bootstrap program from the disk. The full bootstrap program can be changed easily because of tiny bootstrap loader program. We have to install this program in your ROM. Once you load it, then you can edit or you can erase that ROM program, that means boot program. A new version of the simply written onto the disk. You can install some boot code inside a ROM. The full bootstrap program is stored in the boot blocks at a fixed location on the disk. A disk that has a boot partition is called boot disk or system disk. So which part of the ROM contain boot code, that part is called boot disk. Okay, so now we have another one, that is some of the blocks in the hard disk may have some problem. That block is called bad block. So here we have that concept, bad block concept. Why we have that bad block? We will see that. Disk are that means we have disk, there we may have some failure of sectors. Sector means anyway track is divided into smaller blocks, that is called sectors. We are going to store many things inside a sector itself. Failure of sectors due to the fast movement of read and write head. So we seen that in beginning slides, that is a head crash. So that is the concept here. If there is a head crash, there may be a chance of failure of sectors, or there may be a chance of damage of sectors. If there is any damage of sectors, then sometimes the whole disk will changed, right? If there is any problem, we have to change entire disk. Such a group of sectors that are defective are called bad blocks. Because of some read and write head problem, so some of the sectors may have some defect, so defective problems. So at that time, that defective sectors is called bad blocks. We have a different way to overcome this. One is manually we can overcome, so handled by manually, that we can doing in MS-DOS. Another one we can do by using one method called sector sparing. Sector sparing, it is also called forwarding, or another method is sector slipping. One is sector sparing, another one is a sector slipping. So we have these two methods to remove this, to overcome this bad block problem. Either we can go for manually, or we can go for sector sparing and sector slipping. And continuation of that is we have swap space management. The amount of swap space needed on a system can vary depending on the amount of physical memory. The amount of virtual memory it is backing, and the way in which the virtual memory is used. So this mainly swap system concept is coming under virtual memory concept. So there we need to swap something, we need to swap the data. So while swapping, we need some virtual space. How much virtual space we need for swapping purpose? So we are going to see that thing here. It can range from a few megabytes. That means that virtual memory area it can be, that means swapping we need virtual space, right? So it can range from a few megabytes of disk space to gigabytes. Some MB to GB space we required for swapping. The swap space can overestimated or underestimated. So what do you mean by overestimated? What do you mean by underestimated? We will see that. It is safer to overestimate than to underestimate the amount of swap space required. So overestimation is good compared to underestimation, because here we have problem. If a system run out of swap space due to underestimation of space, it may be forced to abort the process or may crash entirely. If your system, here we seen in the third point, swap space can be overestimated or underestimated. If that is underestimated, there is a chance of crashing of entire that swap system or disk. Chance is there. So why we underestimated? That means you don't have that much swap space. So that means system run out of the swap space. We have more data, swapping space is less, so we can't swap all the datas. So that is, then that time we may lose many datas, or there may be a chance of crash of data or this process entirely. So don't go for underestimation. So better is overestimation. What is the problem in overestimation? There is a problem, waste. Overestimation, you are keeping lot of space for swapping purpose. Virtually we are placing lot of space for swapping purpose. Overestimation waste disk space. Yes, it wastes disk space that could otherwise be used for files. We can use that space for other things, but it does not other harm. It don't have any problem compared to underestimation. Underestimation, there may be a chance of data loss, there may be a chance of disk crash, but here we don't have that problem. There is a no data loss, because we have enough space for your swapping. So here this is a good method, overestimation. Now swap space location. How we have to swap? What is the location for that? We have swap space can reside in one of two places. That means swap space we can place in two places in your method. One is, it can be curved out of normal file system. That means one is a file system, normal file system, and separate disk partition. Either you can use the file system or you can use the disk partition. There, that concept we can see that swap space, because the swapping is mainly required in the file system, that you know in the previous modules. So how it is related to file system, we will see that. If the swap space is simply a large file within the file system, normal file system routine can be used to create it, name it, and allocate it space. External fragmentation can greatly increases swapping time by forcing multiple seek during reading or writing of the process image. We can improve performance by caching the block location information in physical memory. File system we can consider as one of the swap space. Another swap space or location we can consider in the disk partition. Alternatively, swap space can be created in the separate raw partition. A separate swap space storage manager is used to allocate and deallocate the blocks from the raw partition. In the case of disk partition, we have to go for separate. There is a storage manager we have to use. Separate swap space storage manager we have to use in the case of disk partition concept. So there are two methods. There is a swap space location is two. One is a file system, another one is a disk partition system. So Till now we seen some of the main concept related to disk, scheduling and attachment and partition, everything. In the next class we are going to see some of the protection methods. Thank you.